Picture this. It's December 1st, 2017, and Netflix is about to launch something unprecedented. Not another American blockbuster, not a British period drama, but Germany's first ever Netflix original series. Little did anyone know that Dark would become one of the most celebrated, mind-bending television shows of all time. A series that would make people around the world furiously sketch family trees and debate time travel paradoxes until the early morning hours. But how did this happen? How did a Swiss director and a German writer create a show so intricate, so meticulously crafted, that it would earn comparisons to Twin Peaks and be ranked among the greatest television series of the 21st century? This is the story of Dark, from its origins to its breathtaking conclusion, and everything that happened behind the scenes to bring this phenomenon to life. The story of Dark begins not with time travel or mysterious caves, but with a techno-thriller about hackers. In 2014, director Baran Odar and writer Jantje Friese released Who Am I? No System is Safe, a German film about a Berlin-based computer hacking group. The film was sharp, stylish, and successful. It also caught the attention of someone very important, Netflix. Friese's screenplay for Who Am I? Earned her a nomination for Best Screenplay at the German Film Awards in 2015. Through this film, Netflix discovered the creative duo and made them an offer they couldn't refuse. The streaming giant wanted Odar and Friese to create a series based on the hacker film, but the couple had other ideas. You see, Baran Odar and Jantje Friese weren't just creative partners, they were also romantic partners, a husband and wife team who had met years earlier at the University of Television and Film, Munich. Friese had studied production and media management, while Odar honed his skills as a director. Their collaboration had already produced the 2010 film The Silence, but Dark would become their magnum opus. Instead of expanding on the hacker concept Netflix originally proposed, Odar and Friese pitched something entirely different, a German mystery series about a small town haunted by secrets, where children disappear and time itself becomes unraveled. Netflix, to their credit, embraced the idea. On February 24, 2016, the streaming service announced they had ordered 10 hour-long episodes of the series, scheduled for release in late 2017. Jantje Friese later reflected on this moment. The way Dark was embraced by Netflix was extraordinary. We're so happy to be making this show in Germany for Netflix subscribers around the world to enjoy. So, where did this crazy storyline come from? What inspired a narrative so complex that it would eventually require Netflix to create an entire website just to help viewers track the characters and their relationships? The answer lies in the childhood experiences of Odar and Friese themselves. Both creators grew up in small German towns during one of the most frightening periods in recent European history, the Chernobyl nuclear disaster of 1986. When that Ukrainian reactor exploded, radioactive materials spread across Europe, creating widespread fear of contamination. For young Germans, this wasn't just news, it was a real, tangible threat that invaded their everyday lives. This fear of nuclear power and what lurks beneath the surface of seemingly normal towns became baked into Dark's DNA. The fictional Winden nuclear power plant isn't just a location in the series, it's a character, a looming presence that connects past, present, and future. But the nuclear fears were just one ingredient. The creators were also deeply influenced by the television and literature that shaped their teenage years. David Lynch's Twin Peaks was a major touchstone. Like Lynch's masterpiece, Dark would explore the darkness hiding behind closed doors in a small community. The series would share Twin Peaks' surrealist approach, its odd characters, and its unflinching examination of small-town secrets. Stephen King was another massive influence, particularly his novel It. The idea of childhood friends confronting supernatural evil, of the past reaching into the present, of cycles that repeat across generations, these King-esque elements would become central to Dark storytelling. The creators were also influenced by the work of Gregory Crewdson, whose theatrical, precisely lit suburban scenes create an unsettling atmosphere where everything seems normal until you notice something deeply wrong beneath the surface. Odar bought all of Crewdson's photo books and showed them to every department, declaring, "This is our look." And then there was the science. Unlike Stranger Things, which Dark would inevitably be compared to, Odar and Friese wanted their supernatural elements grounded in actual scientific theory. The series opens with an Einstein quote: "The distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion." Time travel in Dark isn't about monsters or magic, it's about Einstein's theories, about time as a circle rather than a line, about the bootstrap paradox and determinism versus free will. Here's where things get truly insane. Dark features 72 characters, not 72 people you briefly glimpse in crowd scenes, but 72 actual characters with names, relationships, and importance to the plot. And here's the kicker. Many of these characters exist in 3 different time periods, requiring 3 different actors to portray the same person at different ages. Jantje Friese, who wrote every single episode of all 3 seasons, called structuring this story a complex task. That might be the understatement of the century. Think about the logistics for a moment. You're telling a story that jumps between 1953, 1986, 2019, 2052, and later adds 1921, 1888, and an entire parallel universe. You need to cast not just one young Jonas, but also middle-aged Jonas and elderly Jonas, and they all need to believably look like the same person, separated by decades. But somehow, they pulled it off brilliantly. The casting of Dark has been universally praised as some of the best in television history. Fans frequently marvel at how the actors playing different ages of the same character genuinely look like they could be the same person separated by decades. Take Jonas Conwald, the series protagonist. Young Jonas is played by Louis Hoffmann, a talented German actor who never formally studied acting. Hoffmann got into acting at age 11 through a family friend who worked in German television. By the time he was cast in Dark, he had already won awards for his performances in films like Land of Mine and Center of My World. Middle-aged Jonas, the mysterious stranger, is played by Andreas Piechmann, and elderly Jonas, known as Adam, is portrayed by Dietrich Hollander-Boehmer. The 3 actors decided not to collaborate too heavily on their performances, allowing the richness of the character to come from the natural differences in their interpretations, while still maintaining a core consistency. Louis Hoffmann and Andreas Piechmann admitted that the casting department deserves enormous credit for choosing actors who were naturally plausible as the same person. The actors themselves were amazed at how well the matches worked. Lisa Vakari, who plays Martha Nielsen, Jonas's love interest and a pivotal character in the series, had her own journey to Dark. She had been acting since she was a child, starting with classes at age 10 after begging her mother to let her pursue it. Her first major role was in the 2014 film Dr. Spila, and by the time she auditioned for Dark, she had already crossed paths with Louis Hoffmann at the New Faces Awards, where both received Rising Star honors. Then, years later, they reunited at the audition for Dark. Hoffmann and Vakari recall this reunion fondly. There's even a picture of them at the New Faces Awards where the height difference between them is comically exaggerated. When they met again for Dark, they both knew they were joining something special. One of the most distinctive aspects of Dark is its visual style. This isn't a series that looks like it was shot for television. It looks like a 5-hour cinematic epic. There's a reason for that. Cinematographer Nikolaus Summerer and director Baran Odar made some very specific, very bold choices about how to film this series. First, there was the camera. Most Netflix original series are shot on RED cameras, which are excellent for achieving the 4K resolution Netflix requires. But Summerer and Odar wanted something different. They wanted the Alexa 65, one of the best cameras in the world, designed primarily for high-budget feature films. The Alexa 65 has exceptional tonal range, color space, and latitude. It can capture more detail in dark scenes than almost any other camera. Since the series is literally called Dark and features many scenes shot at night or in dimly lit locations, this camera was essential. It allowed them to shoot actual night scenes while still preserving visual detail, avoiding the common day for night technique, where scenes are shot during the day and edited to look like nighttime. The series was shot in 4K Ultra HD resolution using ARRI Alexa 65 cameras with Zeiss Ultra Prime lenses. For some shots, they also used the ARRI Alexa Mini. This high-end equipment meant Dark looked more like a Christopher Nolan film than a typical Netflix series. Getting Netflix to approve the Alexa 65 wasn't automatic. The streaming service has strict requirements about which cameras can be used for their originals, but the combination of Summerer's vision and the specific needs of the show convinced them to make an exception. Then there was the lighting. Working with ARRI sky panels and following Gregory Crewdson's photographic aesthetic, the crew created scenes that feel staged and theatrical, like watching actors perform in carefully constructed dioramas. The lighting is often deliberately unnatural, creating an atmosphere of unease even in seemingly mundane moments. Here's a secret. Winden doesn't exist. The fictional German town where all of Dark's mysteries unfold is an amalgamation of locations scattered throughout Berlin and the surrounding Brandenburg region. The creators specifically wanted a town that looks like it could be anywhere in the world, transcending specific German aesthetics. Principal photography for Season 1 began on October 18, 2016 and wrapped on April 8, 2017, a grueling 6-month shoot with a total of 151 shooting days, including second unit work. Director Baran Odar directed all 10 episodes himself, maintaining absolute creative control over the visual storytelling. The locations themselves tell a fascinating story. The iconic Jonas House, that gray, modern structure where so much of the series' emotional weight resides, is located at the end of Elisabethstrasse in Schildau, on the northern outskirts of Berlin. The owner of this private residence eventually started selling gift-packaged roof tiles from the property and organizing tours for fans. Imagine having your house become so famous that people will pay hundreds of euros just to visit it. The Winden Church and Cemetery, where Noah and other characters have crucial encounters, is actually the stunning wooden chapel at Südwestkirchhof Cemetery in Stonsdorf, near Potsdam. This chapel was built between 1908 and 1911 in Norwegian style, and its atmospheric beauty perfectly captures the series' Gothic sensibility. The high school where Jonas, Martha, and their friends attend classes is the Rheinfelder School in Berlin's Charlottenburg-Wilmersdorf neighborhood. That distinctive yellow brutalist architecture appears across all 3 seasons, serving as one of the few constants as the timeline shifts. But perhaps the most important location is also the most fictional, the Winden Cave System. In the series, these caves contain the wormhole that allows time travel. In reality, the cave was a masterpiece of production design and special effects. The exterior entrance was built as a set in a forest between Tremsdorf and Saarmund in Brandenburg, south of Berlin. The interior cave scenes were shot in the Unicorn Cave in Harz region of northern Germany, a real cave with a history dating back to the 1500s. The entrance you see on the show, with its mysterious door and ominous atmosphere, was created through a combination of this constructed set and CGI. Much to the disappointment of devoted fans who traveled to Berlin hoping to visit, the Winden Cave entrance no longer exists. It was torn down after filming, returning that quiet Brandenburg forest to its natural state. Other key locations include Schloss Lanka in Brandenburg, which served as both the Waldhotel Winden in 2019 and the Doppler family home in 1953. The gates of the nuclear power plant were filmed at the Olympic Stadium bell tower, with the massive cooling towers added through computer animation. The frequently seen bus stop and T intersection were filmed at Fahrtechnik Akademie in Zosen, a safety driving training center in Brandenburg. If you've watched Dark, you know it's almost always raining. The series is drenched in atmosphere, both literally and figuratively. This wasn't just a stylistic choice or special effects wizardry. Much of Season 1 was filmed during Berlin's winter, on location in actual cold and wet conditions. Louis Hoffman, who spent countless hours outside in that iconic yellow raincoat, later admitted, "It was hard to always be cold and wet." This wasn't actors pretending to be cold. They were genuinely freezing, genuinely soaked, hour after hour, day after day. Think about that for a moment. You're a young actor, you're outside in a German winter, it's raining, you're in a forest at night, and you have to deliver an emotionally complex performance while your teeth are chattering and your clothes are soaked through, and you have to do this for 6 months. The dedication shows on screen. There's an authenticity to the misery, to the dampness, to the bone-deep cold that permeates Dark's first season. The actor's breath forms clouds in the air. The shivering isn't acted. The discomfort is real. This commitment to shooting in actual conditions rather than relying entirely on studio work and special effects gave Dark a tactile, visceral quality that sets it apart from more polished, more comfortable productions. No discussion of Dark's creation would be complete without addressing Ben Frost's extraordinary score. Frost, an Iceland-based composer known for his experimental electronic music, was brought in to create the sonic landscape for this German nightmare. Frost first met with Odar and Friese during Season 1. He was immediately struck by Nicholas Summerer's cinematography, the texture, the mood, the visual aesthetic. I could hear immediately what I wanted to do with it, Frost recalled. His approach was to create music in what he calls a dream space, a vacuum of possibility. The result is a score that's simultaneously beautiful and terrifying, atmospheric and aggressive. It uses droning synths, distorted strings, and ambient noise to create a constant sense of unease. The music never lets you relax, never lets you feel safe. In addition to Frost's score, Dark features an incredible selection of pre-released songs that became inseparable from the series' identity. The opening theme, Goodbye, by Apparat, in collaboration with Soap and Skin, perfectly sets the tone for what's to come, melancholic, mysterious, and tinged with inevitability. If you think filming Dark was challenging, wait until you hear about the post-production process. Sven Nuri, the post-production supervisor working with Ari Media, describes it as one of the most intense experiences of his career. Here's the challenge. Picture lock, the point where editing is finalized, came at the end of July 2017. The first test packages had to be ready by mid-August. The first deliverables for Netflix's location team needed to be available by September. This meant producing 504 minutes of content, the equivalent of 5 feature films, in just over 5 weeks. And not just any content, but content meeting Netflix's exacting quality standards and delivered in perfect 4K resolution. Nuri had been in contact with the Ari team since February 2016, planning obsessively for this impossible deadline. They started sound post-production immediately after wrapping filming in April, running parallel to the editing process. This meant that viewings and approvals could be done with processed sound rather than having people imagine what wasn't there yet. The visual effects work, shared between Ari VFX and Rise VFX, also began early. By the time Picture Lock arrived, they were almost finished rather than just beginning. Even with this preparation, the schedule was brutal. The team had to produce a DCP, a digital cinema package, for the Toronto International Film Festival premiere while simultaneously finishing the entire series. Everything had to be perfect, extremely fast, and within budget. Netflix's quality control process, Nuri noted, was unlike anything he'd experienced. He explained, "The people responsible at Netflix examine everything very precisely and repeatedly to make sure that nothing restricts the viewer experience." Netflix engineers were closely involved, requesting status reports, visiting the facility, and ensuring every frame met their standards. After Season 1's success, Netflix greenlit Season 2, which was released on June 21, 2019. Principal photography ran from June to November 2018. This season expanded the timeline even further, adding scenes set in 2053 and 1921, while continuing the stories set in the established time periods. Filming Season 2 presented new challenges. The actors and crew had to return to the same locations years later and recreate the exact same atmospheric conditions. Sets had to be preserved or reconstructed. The continuity demands were staggering, not just matching actor appearances, but matching the weather, the lighting, the seasonal vegetation. But the team rose to the challenge. Season 2 received even more critical acclaim than the first, with a 100% rating on Rotten Tomatoes based on 30 reviews. Critics praised its increasingly complex narrative while noting that the show managed to subvert several tropes regarding the concepts of time travel. For the third and final season, Odar and Friese decided to do something truly audacious. They would literally mirror reality. Season 3 introduces a parallel universe, Martha's World, and to represent this visually, they flipped everything. We actually mirrored all the images that take place in a mirrored world. Stairs that go from left to right, they now go from right to left. Doors that used to be on the left side were on the right side. This wasn't just a camera trick. Sets had to be physically reconstructed in reverse. Props had to be changed. Books on bookshelves had their titles mirrored, and the actors had to learn to do everything backwards, opening doors with the wrong hand, moving in mirror-reversed patterns. The biggest challenge was actually for actors to play everything in a mirrored way. You have to open doors with your left hand, and if you've ever tried that for one day, it is really weird and awkward. Lisa Vicari wearing Jonas's yellow raincoat in Season 3 became a powerful symbol of this role reversal. Both she and Louis Hoffman found it emotionally disorienting. Just even her wearing the yellow raincoat in the costume test was really weird, Odar recalled. For Louis, being on set and she's entering the room with his jacket, the first reaction was like, "Give me back my jacket, this is mine." Filming for Season 3 began in May 2019 and wrapped in December 2019. The season would introduce yet another time period, 1888, while bringing the entire complex narrative to a close. Throughout the process, Odar and Friese knew exactly where they were going. Unlike many series that make it up as they go, Dark had its ending planned from the beginning. But this, Friese insists, made it harder, not easier.
It always sounds to people like it's easier to do a last season when you know where you're going, she explained. But I honestly believe that the contrary is true. If you don't know where you're going, you can just write whatever. But if you know where you want to end, it is even harder to then lay out the structure for the episodes to get there. The ending they created, which we won't spoil here, has been widely praised for its emotional resonance and intellectual satisfaction. It was bold, bittersweet, and true to the series' philosophical explorations of time, fate, and free will. When filming wrapped, Baran Odar found himself unable to let go. I went back 3 days after the end of shooting because I was really not feeling well, to be honest, he admitted. Friese added, "You were really lovesick after filming was done. You really had a problem letting go." After 26 episodes and 3 years of their lives, what did Odar and Friese keep from the set? The yellow raincoat, naturally, the St. Christopher necklace that plays such an important role in the story, and the recreation of Rubens' painting The Fall of the Damned that hangs in Adams' Sic Mundus Hall. These physical artifacts are all that remain of a production that transformed their lives and television history. But Dark's impact extended far beyond the crew. The series became a global phenomenon in a way few German productions ever have. It streamed simultaneously in 190 countries. Fans created elaborate family trees, timeline charts, and theoretical frameworks to understand the show's complexity. The series became part of pop culture. Fans got dark-themed tattoos, named their children after characters. Martha and Noah became the most popular names in Germany the year Season 2 aired, and created countless hours of analysis videos and podcasts. Dark won Germany's prestigious Grimme Prize Award in 2018, with Baran Odar specifically honored for his direction. The series was nominated for numerous other awards and appeared on countless best-of lists. The BBC ranked it the 58th best TV series of the 21st century. BuzzFeed included it among the 25 best TV shows of all time. Let's talk numbers. Dark required 151 shooting days for Season 1 alone. 72 distinct characters, 3 to 5 actors for many characters across different time periods, filming in 4K Ultra HD on one of the world's best cameras, coordination across dozens of locations around Berlin and Brandenburg, post-production of 504 minutes of content in just over 5 weeks, creation of a coherent narrative spanning 7 different time periods across 3 seasons, development of a parallel universe with mirror-reversed sets and props, a musical score and song selection that became inseparable from the show's identity. All of this was accomplished by a first-time television showrunner duo who had previously only made films. The fact that Dark exists and not only excels is a testament to meticulous planning, unwavering vision, and an incredible team of dedicated professionals. So what made Dark work when so many ambitious series fail? Several factors stand out. First, the planning. Odar and Friese knew their ending before they began. They mapped out 3 seasons of complex, interconnected storylines before shooting the first frame. This allowed them to plant seeds in Season 1 that wouldn't pay off until Season 3, creating a sense of inevitability and design that rewards repeat viewing. Second, the commitment to a singular vision. Every episode was written by Jantje Friese. Every episode was directed by Baran Odar. This meant no stylistic inconsistencies, no tonal shifts between episodes, no different writers pulling the story in competing directions. Third, the decision to treat the audience as intelligent. Dark never dumbs itself down. It never holds your hand. It trusts you to keep up, to remember details from episodes you watched months or years ago, to piece together the puzzle yourself. This respect for the audience created an intensely loyal fan base who felt rewarded for their attention. Fourth, the casting. Without the remarkable work of finding actors who could believably portray the same characters at different ages, the series would have been impossible to follow. The casting directors deserve as much credit as anyone for Dark's success. Fifth, the production values. By insisting on the Alexa 65, by shooting on location in actual weather conditions, by meticulously designing every visual element, the team created a show that looks and feels like cinema rather than television. This elevated quality signaled to audiences that they were watching something special. One aspect of Dark's production that deserves special attention is the editing process. Robert Razasic, Anya Siemens, Dennis Bachter, Boris Gromadsky, Simon Gstatmeyer, Sven Budelman, and Rowan Densenboer, the editing team, faced an unprecedented challenge. They weren't just cutting a linear story, they were assembling a puzzle that had to work across multiple timelines simultaneously. Think about what this means in practical terms. You have a scene in 2019 that needs to connect visually and thematically to scenes in 1986 and 1953. You have dialogue spoken in one time period that only makes sense if you remember something from a different era. You have objects like the St. Christopher necklace or the time machine blueprints that appear across decades and must maintain perfect continuity. The editors had to track not just the emotional arc of each character within each timeline, but also how each character's arc connected across time. They had to ensure that when Jonas in 2019 does something, it meaningfully connects to what middle-aged Jonas is doing in 1986 and what elderly Adam is planning in 2053. This required an almost obsessive attention to detail. Every cut had to be deliberate. Every transition between time periods had to feel earned rather than arbitrary. The series uses several techniques to help viewers orient themselves. Title cards showing the year, subtle changes in color grading for different eras, and musical cues that signal temporal shifts. But these tools only work if the editing itself is precise. The editorial team also had to work within that brutal post-production schedule, reviewing hours of footage and making critical decisions under intense time pressure. The fact that Dark feels so meticulously crafted despite being assembled so quickly is a testament to their skill. From the moment Dark's first trailer dropped, comparisons to Stranger Things were inevitable. Both shows premiered in 2016-2017. Both had 1980s settings, at least partially. Both involved supernatural mysteries. But the creators were quick to push back against the comparison, and for good reason. Dark was already in pre-production when Stranger Things premiered. The series is fundamentally different in tone, approach, and ambition. We are more based on science, to be honest, than in Stranger Things, where it's monsters, Odar explained. Our supernatural thing is more scientific and based on the Albert Einstein theory that time's not linear, but a circle. We're the dark European brother of Stranger Things. Interestingly, the creators said they welcomed the comparisons rather than resenting them. It's really exciting because if all these people enjoyed Stranger Things, they might also enjoy our show, Friese noted. The association helped Dark find its initial audience, even if the series ultimately proved to be something quite different from the Duffer Brothers' nostalgia-driven American horror. Dark is slower, darker, and more philosophically complex than Stranger Things. There's no comic relief, no 80s pop culture references played for laughs, no clear heroes and villains. It's a show that demands patience and concentration, that trusts its audience to engage with challenging ideas about determinism and free will. The fact that both shows succeeded demonstrates that there was room in the streaming landscape for different approaches to similar premises. Stranger Things became a pop cultural phenomenon through its accessibility and nostalgia. Dark became a cult classic through its uncompromising complexity and philosophical depth. We've discussed the casting, but let's dive deeper into what the actors themselves experienced bringing these characters to life across time. Louis Hoffman, Andreas Pietschmann, and Dietrich Hollanderbäumer, the three actors playing Jonas at different ages, had a particularly interesting challenge. In interviews, they revealed their approach. They deliberately chose not to meet extensively to discuss the character. They wanted each version of Jonas to feel distinct, to reflect how life and experience change a person. The richness of the character came from it being played by three actors, Pietschmann explained. This decision meant that young Jonas, the stranger, and Adam feel like the same person who has lived vastly different amounts of life rather than three actors doing impersonations of each other. Hoffman credited the casting department for choosing actors who were naturally plausible as the same person. He noted, "It wasn't about us trying to mimic each other, it was about us each bringing our truth to different stages of this person's life." This philosophy extended to the physical performances. The actors weren't given extensive notes about mannerisms to copy. Instead, they were encouraged to think about how trauma, experience, and the weight of knowledge would change someone's bearing, their way of moving through the world. For actresses like Ulrika Jenkins and Lisa Kreutzer, who played middle-aged and elderly Claudia respectively, the challenge was similar. They had to embody a character who undergoes tremendous transformation from a somewhat naive young woman to a time-traveling mastermind who ultimately saves two universes. Child actors faced their own difficulties. Young performers like Dan Leonard Liebrens, who played Mikkel or Michael, and Carlotta von Falkenhayn, who played young Elizabeth, had to deliver emotionally complex performances while dealing with the confusion of time travel plotlines. German child labor laws meant their shooting hours were limited, requiring careful scheduling. Gwendolyn Goebel, who played young Claudia, had to convey the intelligence and determination that would eventually make her character the key to breaking the loop. For a child actor, understanding that kind of character arc requires impressive maturity. Jantje Friese's writing process for Dark deserves its own deep dive. Imagine sitting down to write a story that spans 7 different time periods, involves 72 characters, and must maintain perfect internal consistency across 26 episodes. Where do you even start? Friese said in interviews that they began with the ending. They knew where the story needed to go, knew the final revelation about the origin world and how Jonas and Martha would break the cycle. Then they worked backwards, planting the seeds and clues that would make that ending feel inevitable. But it wasn't a simple linear process. We're going back and forth, Friese explained. The biggest structural issue is when do we reveal what? They had to decide not just what would happen, but when the audience would learn about it, from whose perspective, and in what order. Every episode required tracking multiple timelines. A scene in 1986 might be followed by a scene in 2019, which connects to something in 1953, which sets up a future scene in 2052. Each transition had to feel natural despite jumping across decades or centuries. Friese used elaborate charts and timelines to track everything. She had to know where every character was at every moment across every timeline. She had to ensure that objects moved through time correctly, that the time machine blueprints showed up in the right places at the right times, that the radioactive material's journey made sense. She also had to balance multiple tones. Scenes with young characters in 2019 needed to feel contemporary and relatable. Scenes in 1986 needed to capture that era's aesthetic and attitudes. Scenes in 1953 required a different approach entirely, and scenes in the post-apocalyptic future needed to convey both horror and hope. The fact that Friese wrote every single episode herself is both impressive and essential. A different writer taking over for even one episode could have introduced inconsistencies that would have broken the intricate web she'd woven. While Dark isn't a visual effects heavy show in the ways that Marvel films or Game of Thrones are, the VFX work by Ari VFX and Rise VFX was crucial to making the series work. The nuclear power plant cooling towers, for instance, are entirely CGI. The gates and buildings exist, but those massive cooling towers that loom over Winden were added digitally. This allowed the production to use the Olympic Stadium bell tower as the plant's entrance, while creating the sense of a much larger, more ominous facility. The wormhole effects, the swirling, churning mass of energy and matter in the cave, required sophisticated VFX work. These scenes needed to feel both scientifically plausible and visually terrifying. The wormhole isn't just a special effect, it's a character, a presence that represents both hope and doom.
Time travel effects had to be handled carefully. When characters travel through time, there's a distinctive visual style, the disorientation, the flashes of other time periods, the sense of being pulled apart and reassembled. These effects needed to be consistent across all 3 seasons while also evolving as the rules of time travel became more complex. The apocalypse sequences in Season 2 required extensive VFX work. The black sphere of energy expanding from the tower plant, consuming everything in its path, had to look catastrophic while also serving the story's thematic purposes. This wasn't destruction for its own sake, it was the visualization of fate itself becoming unavoidable. Season 3's Mirror World presented unique challenges. Beyond physically reversing sets, some shots required digital flipping and alteration to maintain the mirrored aesthetic. Text had to be reversed, architectural elements had to be digitally modified, and the VFX team had to ensure that the mirrored world felt slightly off, subtly wrong, without being obvious about it. Let's talk about that yellow raincoat. Jonas's bright yellow raincoat became an icon, instantly recognizable to fans of the series. But costume designer Pierre-Yves Guiraud made that choice for specific reasons. The yellow stands out against Dark's predominantly gray, blue, and brown palette. It makes Jonas easy to track visually across different time periods and locations. It also serves a symbolic function. Jonas is literally a bright spot in this dark world, a character trying to bring light to the shadows. When Martha wears Jonas's yellow raincoat in Season 3, it's not just a costume choice, it's a transfer of symbolic weight. The coat represents the burden of trying to save everyone, of being caught in the loop. Lisa Vicari wearing it signaled to the audience that Martha was taking on Jonas's role in the parallel world. The costume design also had to maintain consistency across time periods while reflecting the different eras. Characters in 1953 needed to look authentically period appropriate. The 1986 scenes required careful attention to 80s fashion without falling into costume party cliché. The 2019 scenes needed to feel contemporary without being trendy. For adult characters who appear across multiple time periods, the costumes had to evolve in ways that made sense. Claudia's wardrobe becomes more severe and functional as she transforms from nuclear plant director to time-traveling revolutionary. Ulrich's style reflects his desperation as he moves through different eras. The future scenes allowed more creative freedom. The post-apocalyptic 2052 aesthetic draws on familiar dystopian imagery, worn, patched clothing, makeshift protective gear, but grounded in the series' established visual language. When Dark ended on June 27, 2020, fittingly the date of the apocalypse within the show, it left behind something unprecedented in television history. It proved that complex, intelligent, non-English language science fiction could find a massive global audience. It demonstrated that streaming platforms could support auteur-driven projects that would never survive network television's commercial demands. More importantly, it showed that television as a medium could support storytelling of genuine philosophical depth. Dark isn't just a puzzle box to be solved, it's a meditation on time, fate, free will, grief, and the weight of the past. It asks serious questions about determinism and agency while never losing sight of its characters' emotional journeys. The series also paved the way for more international Netflix originals. If Dark, a German-language series about time travel and nuclear power plants, could become a global sensation, then the doors were open for ambitious projects from anywhere in the world. Odar and Friese went on to create 1899, another mind-bending mystery series for Netflix, though it was controversially canceled after one season despite strong critical reception and a devoted fan base. The creators announced they had planned multiple seasons, and the cancellation left many questions unanswered, an ironic fate for creators who had so meticulously wrapped up Dark's mysteries. Currently, they're developing Something is Killing the Children, a horror series based on the comic book by James Tynion IV and Werther Dell'Edera. This proves that Dark wasn't a one-time fluke, but the work of genuinely talented creators with a distinctive vision and the skills to execute it. Der Anfang ist das Ende, und das Ende ist der Anfang. The beginning is the end, and the end is the beginning. This phrase, repeated throughout Dark, perfectly captures the series itself. Understanding how it was made helps you appreciate what you're watching, but watching the show also helps you understand the monumental achievement of its creation. From Baran Odar and Jantje Friese's bold pitch to Netflix, through 6 months of cold, wet shooting in Berlin's winter, to the frantic post-production rush, to the mind-bending introduction of mirror worlds in Season 3, every step of Dark's creation was as complex and carefully plotted as the series itself. The team created something that had never been done before in television, a 3-season narrative of perfect internal consistency where every piece fits, where every question has an answer, where the ending was always inevitable but still manages to surprise. They did this shooting in a foreign language for a global streaming platform with limited budget compared to American productions, and with no guarantee that audiences would even follow the story's complexity. The result is a masterpiece, a series that will be studied, rewatched, and discussed for decades to come. A show that proved television could be art without sacrificing entertainment, could be intelligent without being pretentious, could be complex without being incomprehensible. Dark exists in a loop, but its legacy moves forward, continuing to influence creators and inspire audiences. And isn't that, after all, exactly what great art should do? It transcends its moment of creation, moving through time, touching people across generations, proving that some things, like truly brilliant storytelling, exist outside of time's linear constraints. The making of Dark was as remarkable as the series itself, and we're all lucky it existed, even if it only in one timeline.